Hey guys, welcome back. This is going to be part 2 on working on the bed. I have some 180 grit sandpaper on my long block here. What I want to do is I'm going to block sand down this area here along the top and the front. You can see where the wheel flares went. Where the wheel flares went, I'm just going to go ahead and hit that with a DA sander, because that's not going to matter if I spend a bunch of time block sanding that, because you're never going to see it. So basically how I'm going to block sand this is just going to go, take my time, kind of go back and forth both directions. I want to really cut it down nice and get it nice and flat. And we'll leave it at the 180 grit sanding marks for now, because I'm going to epoxy primer this. Then I'm going to do my body work, and my body work's going to stick better to 180 grit marks, sanding marks in the paint than with 320. Plus then I'm going to filler prime. After I filler prime, then I can go around and 320 the whole thing. Like I said yesterday in the first video, I'm not going to filler prime the whole entire bedside, just going to filler prime the areas that get body worked. So let me get the DA sander. I'm going to sand that stuff first because there's some dirt and stuff stuck to it. So I want to get that cleaned off, and then we'll come back and I'll keep blocking. Okay, I have 180 grit on my DA sander, same as the block. I'm just going to sand all this area first. I'm going to pull off these brackets that are hanging out for the side marker lights that go on the wheel flares, and I'll probably sandblast them and paint them black again. They're a little rusty, so I'm going to go ahead and get all those unbolted. I'm going to keep sanding down the side of this. I'm going to, like I said, with the DA where the wheel flares go, and then I'm going to block sand the rest of it. Then I'll come back and show you what it's looking like. Okay, I've sanded down both sides of the bed. There was a little rock chip or a nick or something from something right here. Little tiny bit of surface rust on the metal, so I'm going to use my little 2-inch angle grinder here and grind that down. Okay, I went a lot bigger than I needed to, but I wanted to make sure that I got rid of all the rust off that metal, and then we'll spray some epoxy primer on that. And there are a couple little dents, not really dents, more like nicks in the body work. Let me show you, there's one on the other side. And I like to use this grinder for that as well, because I don't like to just stick Bondo in a dent or a scratch. So basically on this part down here, there's a little bit of body filler here, and they nicked the body filler. So I'm going to take this and I want to clean that out a little bit with this wheel. Just like that, because what that does is gives me a good surface that the filler will bite to. Who knows if there's any sort of wax or anything in there. And if you just leave that alone because your sander won't get it because it's low, and you put some body filler in there, you don't really know if it's going to stick or not. So basically, it's all blocked down and everything. I didn't mess with the back because I'll just hit that with 320. You can see here I got into a little bit of body filler. There was a distinctive line right here in the metal from those wheel flares, just constant years and years of beating against the bed. Put a little indentation in the paint, so I had to really block this area down, both sides, really good to get rid of that. I didn't want to just put more filler in there. I wanted to take it out with the paint, and I was able to get it out with the paint. So I think now what I'm going to do is probably mix up a little bit of epoxy primer, hit the bare metal areas. We'll let that set overnight, and then we can start doing the body work to everything. So I'll be back in a couple minutes. Okay, I'm using just an Omni. It's called MP170. It's an epoxy primer. It is a 2-to-1 mix with their hardener, and we're going to not put any reducer in this or anything. We're going to go just straight primer with some hardener. I like to use these disposable cup system from 3M. The PPS cups, you can see it up here. Those are the lids, and obviously that's the liners. They just go right inside one of these cups here. These ones are pretty used. I've been using them for a long time. You don't have to worry about straining it because it has a strainer in the lid. I'm not going to worry about my respirator. I have on my dust mask, which is fine. I'm spraying this outside. I'm not going to worry about it too much. So it's just going to be a 2-to-1 mix. We're not going to mix up a ton because we only have a couple little spots to do. So I'm going to go to 2-to-1 right here. It's 2-to-1-to-1. We're not going to worry about that second one. So I'm going to pour up to 1, and then I'm going to pour my hardener up to the second one. And that should be plenty of epoxy primer for these spots. Okay, we're a little bit above, we're right at the top of the one, so we're a little bit above the line, so I'll duplicate that on the next one, right to there. So now we have our hardener in there. We're going to stir it up with a stick real good, and then we will go hit all the bare metal spots that are visible, and we'll let this dry tonight so that tomorrow afternoon we can start doing the body work. My first coat of body work on the major areas is going to be a coat of short strand fiberglass. We'll put a coat on that first, and then after that we will use regular body filler at that point. So I'm going to go ahead and get this into the gun. Actually, I can just do it now real quick so you can see. Lid goes on, clips onto that liner. So right now that liner and lid are combined, and then you have to put this locking ring on top and lock it to the cup itself. And then your paint gun, just basically, you just slide it over and then it spins until it clips into place. You're good to go there. So let's go out there and hit these spots. I cut a little piece of cardboard. I'm going to hold that up on the bedside because I don't want to get any epoxy primer on the carpet that's in the bed. Okay, we only need to put one coat on because it's just epoxy primer. It's not a filler primer. We're not trying to build with it. We're trying to cover the bare metal with it. Hose plugged in here. And then with these cups here, the proper way to do it is to, I don't know if there's going to be enough in here, but you keep the cup like this and you pull your trigger. Now what you do is you hold the trigger until that liner starts to come up and collapse inside the cup, and you'll watch the fluid come up here, and it'll actually start to come out of the gun. That's it. That's all you got to do. Now you can flip it over and use it just like a regular gravity feed spray gun. So I'm going to hold this cardboard here. I'm just going to put this mask on. It's real windy outside, so it's going to blow away. So we're going to go ahead and put on a nice, even, good coat. Hit all the areas. We got another one up here. I think I got one more down here. got those ones on the other side. Spot right here that I burned through. Little spot down here. Okay, that's it with that. Pretty simple, pretty easy. Now when we do the body work on this, if we go through to the bare metal again, before we do filler primer, literally right before we spray filler primer, we'll put a little bit of epoxy primer over any of the metal areas. We'll let it set for 15-20 minutes, and then we'll just put the a filler primer right over top of it. And I gotta actually see, I might have to order a gallon. I think I might be out of that. Okay, so how I take care of this is I just flip it back over, I pull my trigger down. What that's doing is releasing the extra epoxy primer back into the cup. I'm gonna spin it off of this fitting. And then I have a gun washing cabinet that I use. I only use this gun washing cabinet for primer and for base coat. I do not put my clear gun in here. The reason why I don't put my clear gun in here is you don't want to have any sort of metallics get into your clear gun, because that could definitely screw it up. I got this janky little chain here. I got to get a better setup for it. But what you got to do is you got to wrap your trigger so it stays open. You don't want it to be closed. So it's open, and what you do is you set it on top of this right here. And what that does is that shoots thinner out into the gun, and it comes out the tip. And then also these other sprayers here, and then there's sprayers on the wall here. Those all just shoot gun cleaner all over everything. So basically you just shut it. This actually runs off of air. I usually run it a couple cycles, and that tends to get the gun real clean. And then there's a 5-gallon container down here that the thinner is in, and it strains it as it comes out. And what happens over time is it eventually evaporates, and it turns out to be just a solid container at the bottom. And at that point, you can just get rid of it. And then with this, what I do with the extra paint that's in these cups is I just take it out. I just leave it just like that. After a couple days, that just hardens up and dries. You can throw it away. You cannot throw it away with the liquid still in it, because that's just bad for the environment. Once it's dry, they say you're allowed to throw it away. So, all right. I think that's going to be about it for this video, guys. This wasn't really much to this video. This is just part 2 of, sanding down the body. And you can see why I sanded down the body first, because the overspray from the epoxy is on that paint now, and it's stuck. So we don't have to worry about it delaminating in the future, because I had sprayed that and I didn't sand the body next to it. We could have sprayed it without sanding the body and took a sander and sanded it off, but at least this way I know for sure that it was sanded down. So this is going to end part 2 of the bed. The next part we'll be doing the body work and the filler priming, and then we'll let it set. We'll let it set for a couple days, and then we will probably work on the tailgate and the wheel flares while that filler primer is drying. Then we'll come back, we'll block it down, and we'll do one more filler priming on those spots. And then at that point, the bed will be ready for paint. Now, because this is a pearl white paint job, we need to paint the bed, the tonneau cover, the tailgate, the wheel flares, all at the same time. We have to paint all those pieces at the same time, set them up in the spray booth, and spray them all in one shot. And then when it comes time for the truck, we have to have the doors, the fenders, and the hood all bolted on the vehicle. So basically what I'm gonna have to do is paint the door jambs first. I'll probably remove the doors off the truck. I'm not sure yet because they are white already. I'm not sure if I want to take them back off or not. I'm debating that. But anyways, all the jambs need to be painted first, and then the truck needs to be reassembled. All the door jambs and everything need to be taped off, and then the whole exterior needs to be painted in one shot. The reason why I'm not worried about the bed and the cab is because it's got that little 2-inch gap between the two, and I've never really had a problem with it not matching between the two. Obviously if the bed were attached to the cab, you'd have to paint it all in one shot, because with these pearl paint jobs you cannot panel paint them. It doesn't work out. You'll end up putting a little bit too much pearl on one door versus the other, or that fender might get a little bit more than the door, and then all of a sudden your colors don't match. So we need to paint it, act as two vehicles pretty much, the back half and the front half. So all right guys, that's going to end part 2. If you guys are liking what you're seeing, please like and subscribe. Any questions or comments, feel free to ask. I also have another channel called Troy's Restoration, which I work on arcade games. If anybody's interested in seeing that, it's just under Troy's Restoration. All right guys, have a good night, and I'll see you probably tomorrow.